For episode 19, the story begins with Sakura on her rollerblades that's just crossing the bridge to Penguin Park. She had just finished grocery shopping. But then suddenly she just heard the voice of her older brother that's nearby. So she went to see what was going on. But Tori's not alone because there's his best friend, Julian, and he's with him. Being curious as she could be, Sakura wanted to know what's going on over there. So, as Sakura tries to figure out what's going on in her head, she tried to stop her brother from harming Julian. So she rushed to the scene to confront her brother. She says, "Hold it right there. You leave Julian alone." So when Sakura looks over her shoulder, it's Ruby, but she's not alone because her classmates are with her. So Julian explained to Sakura what was going on. He says that they're shooting a movie and it'll be ready for the film festival that's coming up at the school. And of course, it's really? Julian says, yeah. So after Sakura apologized, that's when Ruby told Tori and Julian, okay, let's try again from the top. So Sakura must have suspected that Ruby is the director of the film. And of course, she's not kidding. So after Ruby told Sakura, you got that right, and then suggested to Sakura that she has an idea. Sakura says, really? What's that? Then Ruby says, what if I told you that you can be in the star in the movie? I could? Sakura asked. So later on at school the next day, Sakura told her best friend Madison what had happened. So after her best friend Madison had learned about Sakura being in the movie with her brother Tori and then her brother's best friend, and Madison says, really? You're going to star in it? And Sakura says, yeah. And Sakura told her best friend that there's something even better. The film festival's going to be coming up pretty soon at Tori and Julian's high school. And you could tell that Madison was very excited. And she says, well, that's great. That's your first silver screen debut that you ever had. She's not kidding. So Sakura says, whoa, wait a minute, slow down. I only got a tiny part. Then, in omission by confession, Madison was told by her best friend that she didn't think she was going to do it, but then Ruby assisted anyway. Don't worry, Sakura. I know you can do it, Madison says. So, what about the costume? Madison asked. Well, Sakura says, Ruby would think of something. Well, gee, that's a shame, Madison says. But I got a suggestion for you. Just let me do your hair and makeup. At least there's something I can do, Madison said. Okay, Sakura says, but I'll ask Ruby for permission to see if it's okay. Well, that's great, Madison said. So after Madison thanks Sakura and demands to know what kind of story is it anyway. Oh, it's a detective story, Sakura said. So Sakura says, I'll show you the script for it. And so Madison went ahead and looked at it. Of course, Madison had read the book about it. It's a murder mystery. And what's even better, Sakura says, is that according to her brother Tori, that this story took place about 50 years. Then what's interesting about it is that Sakura told her best friend is that Julie has the part of the killer. Her brother Tori will be the detective, and as for Sakura, she only has the smart part as Julian's character's sister. Wow, Madison says. If it's set back 50 years ago, then the school itself is finding it very hard to find a part. That's right, Sakura says. I also have heard that they were trying to match up all the likenesses in the old scenes to match up for the film itself. So what kind of a place is the movie looking for? Madison asked. Well, a mansion. Somewhere around 100 years old or so, Sakura said. But what neither Madison or Sakura knew that overhearing the entire conversation was Eli, and he just pleaded himself a case to say, that's perfect. He also said in his case that UA's time is just about coming to an end. So later that night at the Avalon residence, there's Tori in the living room along with his best friend Julian and Sakura. And you could tell that Sakura is very excited that it's her first appearance in the movie. So after Sakura told her brother and his best friend that she'll be right back, she left the room. And that's when Julian looked at Tori, who's his best friend, and made a remark of his case to say, I can't believe your sister are going to steal some scenes from you. Just zip it, Tori said. You can tell that he's not amused with it at all. Now, Tori, who's Julian's best friend, could tell that there was something off with him. So he looked at him after Julian was finished rubbing his eye. He said, What's going on with you? Are you okay? I'm fine, Julian says, just a little sleepy, that's all. You can't go on like this, Tori said. And then Tori says, Don't try to deny it. I know exactly who you are. And he almost accidentally let slip to his best friend. That was until Sakura came back to the living room, and she came back with a tea kettle. So Julian told Sakura, I'm ready for some more tea. And of course, Sakura was more than happy to give him some more. Of course, Tori was very disappointed that he almost accidentally let slip to his best friend to find out who he really is. But then it's Tori's turn to go to the kitchen. He says, I'll be back with some cookies, and then he heads off. So after Sakura poured a cup of tea for Julian, and Julian says, Well, thanks, Sakura. No problem, Sakura said. Then suddenly what Sakura saw was unbelievable. Julian's left hand shoulder is fading away. But after Sakura rubs her eyes, Julian's shoulder came back, and she couldn't help but wonder what is going on here. So Julian asked Sakura a question. Is everything okay? Is there something wrong? No, not at all, Sakura said. At first, Sakura sensed something weird, but then thinks nothing of it. So later at Eli's house, when Eli had heard from Sakura and Madison that the mansion should be used for the film and asked Ruby if they would do it, they being Ruby and the movie crew. She says, Really? We can do that? Of course, Eli said. Then Ruby says, Oh, I was getting worried that you may reject it, so I didn't ask about it just till now. Then Eli said to Ruby, For the directorial debut like yours, how can I say no to that? So Spinner has his turn to plead his case to say, You should be the star in the film, not the director. Well, why not? Ruby said to Spinner. After all, directors do have a say in anything. And of course, she's not kidding. And so she heads off. So anyway, Eli looked at Spinner and then pleaded his case and said, I hope this isn't difficult for you. Spinner says, No, I don't have a problem with that. Are you sure this is a good idea? Spinner asked. Then Spinner pleads his case to say how Tori is the sharp one and he's always suspicious and etc. So after Eli thought about what Spinner said, he gets up from the chair and walks to the fireplace. So Eli told Spinner, Well, it may give me a chance to study him for a while. But not just Tori, but also Julian, Eli said. So in other words, what Eli's telling Spinner that, yes, he's sure, and it is indeed a good idea. So the very next morning outside of Eli's house, everybody's setting up for the final scenes of the film. Of course, everybody was there, including Madison, her best friend Sakura, and of course her brother Tori, and his best friend Julian. So, long story short, Ruby comes out of nowhere and hugs Sakura and says, You look great, and that this scene's going to be great, and etc. So, Ruby asks Sakura a question. Are you ready for your big scene? Yep, I sure am, Sakura said. In the meantime, Sakura's brother Tori was looking at Eli, and then Julia wants to know what was going on with him. At first, Tori was going to say something to Julian as Tori continues to stare at Eli. But then he thinks nothing of it and says, Nothing. So, long story short, meanwhile, inside Eli's house, everybody is sitting up. As for Sakura, she was reading the script again, just like she did the day before. So, Sakura's best friend Madison wants to know from her, You're not nervous, are you? Me? Nervous? Sakura asked. Of course not, she said. I'll fix your hair, Madison suggested, and that's what she did. Of course, what's even better, Eli allows Sakura to sit in the big red chair which she's never sat in before, and so she did. But by the time that Sakura sat down in the chair, she felt something really, really weird. So Sakura was asked by Madison, what's going on? What's wrong? Nothing, Sakura said. Of course, Eli made a confession with Sakura. He said that the chair that she's sitting in right now has been around for a very long time. And Sakura says, really? So after Madison did Sakura's hair, that's when Ruby lets her know that it's time for her to be on the scene. And so Sakura's on her way. Well, Sakura's best friend Madison said if I don't know any better, I think she's very nervous for the first time. Well, even though Sakura's brother agrees with Madison, but then said maybe she's stage shy or something. And then he looked over his best friend Julian. Then Julian confessed to Tori that since he's been sleeping all day previously, he should be alright. So, anyway, long story short, now that the scene that Sakura did was finished, that's when Ruby made a compliment with Sakura and says, You did great. You think so? Sakura asked. And so Ruby nods in agreement. So, long story short, as Ruby was getting ready for the next scene to begin, that's when Sakura approaches Madison and Lee. So, Lee had asked how she went out there, and of course, Sakura says that she's fine, she did okay, but she's not so sure. But Madison told her, Don't worry, I had it all on tape just to prove it, she said. So back with Eli, he's not kidding when he said that the final scene will take place on the balcony. So before the final scene can begin, that's when Tori looked at Julian to say, Are you sure you're going to be okay? Don't worry, Julian says. I'll be fine. So as the final scene begins inside of the house, that's when Eli suggested, Why don't I go in and get us some lunch? So Madison says, Good idea. I'll help you out. No thanks, Eli said, and so he heads off. So long story short, the final scene went as planned. That was until when Julian fell asleep and accidentally fell over the balcony, Tori panicked, and that's when he rushed and grabbed Julian. Down below, back with Sakura, she's now getting worried that Julian will fall off. And the worst of it all, her brother Straight is fading away, unless she does something fast to save Julian. So, with no time to waste, she went behind the bushes and transformed her star key into a star staff. The next thing she did was to use the Windy Cars form to save Julian, and so it did. Well, luckily, thanks to Windy Star Cars form, it manages to grab Julian and landed him safely down on the ground intact. So good news, thanks to Sakura, Julian is saved. Back with Tori, after he saw what had happened, he jumped off the balcony and then uses the tree to jump down. Interesting. And then he rushes to Julian's side to see if he's okay. Then what Tori saw next was unbelievable. Julian changing right in front of him. What was going on? So back with Eli, after he saw what was going on, he made a suggestion to Tori that he should take Julian to one of the mansion's bedrooms where he can rest up. So Tori agrees with Eli's suggestion and said, Good idea. But Eli says, Oh, I suggest you hurry. And so that's what Tori did. So back inside Eli's house, I'm guessing Julian must have been resting in one of the bedrooms and Tori's with him. So Eli agrees to leave both of them in the room. So meanwhile, inside the mansion's bedroom, you see Tori and Julian. When Julian finally woke up, he didn't realize that he was already in bed and sees his best friend that was next to him. So when Julian looked at him and asked if he blacked out, well, Tori says that not only that he did, but it happened right in the middle of the final scene. So back with Tori, who saw Julian change in front of him, and just when he was about to once again reveal to him, just as he did many times before, that's when Ruby comes into the bedroom to check up on Julian to see if he's okay. So that did it for Tori. It was the final straw. So he told Ruby, "Why can't you just leave us alone? Stop interrupting us," he said. So right after Julian made an assurance to Ruby that he's going to be fine, that's when, thanks to Tori, he escorted her out. So after Ruby got escorted out, Spinner could tell that she was very upset. So Spinner asked Ruby a question. "So you couldn't stop them, huh?" So Ruby asked Spinner, "What am I going to do about it?" "What happens now?" she said. "Well," Spinner says, "I'm afraid there's nothing you can do about it now," he said. But Ruby pleaded her case to say no way, and then she explains why. Because she says if she doesn't do anything about it, then Eli will be in trouble. Well, Spinner has his turn to plead his case to say, "You know something? I don't think it's going to affect Eli that much anyway." And he explains why. He said that in Eli's case, he knows that sooner or later that secret's going to be out one way or another. Then Spinner says that that's the way it has to be. "It's meant that way," he said. So back in the bedroom with Julian and Tori, that's when finally Tori had confronted Julian who he really was and that he wasn't who he seems to be. But Julian told Tori that he must have lost his mind. But Tori dismisses it and then confronted Julian again to reveal his true identity. So finally, at long last, Julian agrees. And so, for the very first time, Julian changed into Yue right in front of Tori, Sakura's older brother. So now that Tori and Yue had finally met for the first time, and then Yue made a confession to Tori to say, "I know this is very difficult for me to hide this identity from you. Although," Yue says, "you do have the assessing gift as your sister did." Then Yue also made an omission with Tori that his sister, Sakura, has that gift for some time, and he knew about it. So Tori wanted to know from Yue, "I guess you need my help and my sister's, right?" Then Yue said to Tori, "Now forgive me for asking, but you did see what happened to your best friend Julian, right?" "As a matter of fact, I do," Tori said. Then Yue made another omission with Tori that he's getting weaker and weaker by the minute, and he's not so sure how much longer he's going to last. Then by surprise, Tori just told Yue, "If that's the case, then you're going to have to take all my powers. It's the only way," he said. But Yue warned Tori that if he did that, then Tori won't be able to sense anything anymore. But Tori assures Yue that that's the chance he'll have to take. But Tori says, "Promise me one thing under one condition, that you will protect my sister Sakura no matter what the costs. And second, according to Tori and what he says in his case, he didn't want to lose his best friend Julian." So Yue agrees to keep Tori's promise to protect Sakura. But he said that there was no need to worry about it because, as Yue says in his case, it was part of his duty after all, and he's not kidding. Then Tori told Yue that there's only one more condition that Yue has to keep on his side of the bargain, to make sure that Tori's power would be put into use, because Tori knew if he lost his best friend, he'll never forgive himself. So Yue wanted to know from Tori if he's sure he wants to do that. And Tori says, "Yes, I'm sure." Then Yue knows, "I just want you to know that Julian knows that you are indeed his best friend." And of course, Tori happens to agree with it. And so just like that, with Yue's hands on Tori's shoulders, he began transferring the powers from Tori to Yue for the very first time. Then after that, Tori passed out. So after Tori collapsed into Yue's arms, what Yue did is that he puts Tori to bed, and then closed his eyes, nodded his head, and thanked him. Then by surprise, Sakura shows up. I guess she accidentally overheard what had happened. I can't say for sure. But she's crying and apologizing to Yue. The reason why she's apologizing because she made a confession to Yue that if only her magical powers were strong enough, she could have saved Julian and Yue herself when she had the chance, and now she just blamed herself that she regrettably had not did that. So Yue told Sakura two things that first of all, centuries ago when Cloud Reed had created those cloud cards before he passed away, but not just the cards themselves, but also his guardians, and it took great strength for him to do that. Even better, Cloud Reed before he passed away, he did what it took to protect the cards themselves. So, second of all, what Yue told Sakura that now that Julian knew that he's going to do what it takes to protect both Sakura and the cards themselves. As for her brother Tori, as Yue says in his case, has always believed in her and not to worry about it, that Tori would be fine. So after Yue assures Sakura that her brother's going to be fine, he just needs to rest for a few days. She sensed something was weird going on from outside, and she thought she saw Eli sitting up in the tree, so she rushed to the window. But by the time she did, Eli's gone and the tree was empty. So back with Eli, you're probably wondering where he is. He's now on the roof of his own house, and he pleaded a case. It was just the way he planned it to be, that Tori has given his powers to Yue. But Eli said that rest assured that when the time comes, and if that time comes, it'll be time for Eli himself to reveal himself. But then Eli says in his case, he has to hurry. So anyway, back with Lee, Madison, and Sakura now that the movie is finished shooting at Eli's house. They were walking on the bridge. So while walking on the bridge, Lee wants to know if she was okay, and Madison wants to know if there's anything wrong with her because she's been depressed. Not really, Sakura says. I'm just tired. Now you can tell that Sakura is really excited because she said to Madison and Lee that she couldn't wait to see the movie when it's finished because, as she says in her case, the Reddington Film Festival is coming up soon. She's not kidding. So meanwhile, back at Eli's house in the upstairs bedroom, you see Julian and Tori. Now Tori is resting in bed while Julian sits in the chair and he's watching him. So back with Sakura, Lee, and Madison, they had just arrived at the Avalon residence. So Sakura told Madison that she should see her the next day and to thank her for coming with her. I'll see you tomorrow, Madison said. So after Sakura went inside, it's just Madison and Lee. So back with Sakura, after she goes inside, she goes upstairs to her room and she sees Kiro. So as Sakura sat down on the bed, she just let slip to Kiro that her brother, Tori, has known all about him and Yue all along. And Sakura also let slip to Kiro it's not just that Tori knew about him and Yue, but Julian as well. When Kiro heard that, he said, "What?" But after Kiro thought about what Sakura said, and he says, "Oh, I see." So let me get this straight, Kiro says. Yue decided to take your brother Tori's powers instead. Yes, Sakura says. I'm afraid so. Then Sakura asks Kiro a question. What I want to know from you is, did you know about this all along? Were you aware of it? I mean, even if you knew that my powers weren't going to be strong enough anyway, that Yue and Julian were just going to disappear? So in omission by confession, that's when Kiro said that first of all, yes, he was aware of it. Second of all, yes, he's known all along that since the Core's powers weren't strong enough to keep up Yua's existence anyway, so he took her brother's powers instead. But his only regret is that he didn't even tell Sakura about it. So when Sakura asked him why she wasn't told of this just until now and why she wasn't aware of it, well, according to Kiro, what he says in his case, the reason he didn't want Sakura to worry about it, and then she may try something desperate to save both Yue and Julian herself. In other words, in Sakura's case, she wants to prevent this from ever happening. And so in Kiro's case, he even told Sakura that, in other words, he didn't have a choice but not tell her this just until now. Also, as Carol said, that Sakura would be blaming herself. Sakura just couldn't help but what's going on in her head, and she just couldn't help but understand why Kiro and Yua had to keep the secret for so long, and now she wanted to know from Kiro. By surprise, that's when Kiro just confessed to Sakura that ever since the final judgment, he said that instead of being their mistress, she wanted to become their friend. Kiro also says that you can rest assured on this, that no matter what happens, you and I will here to protect you and will always be at your side. Having said that, that's when Sakura smiled at Kiro and said, "Thank you." Then by surprise, Sakura just told Kiro what happened earlier at Eli's house, and she said that she has a reason to be concerned because she was so scared to death that she almost lost Julian and Yue that day. And Sakura says that this kind of serious scenario is the worst thing that she had ever felt. She knows that something big and bad is going to happen, and she has no idea why. But then Sakura says that whatever's going on, some way, somehow, she's going to get to the bottom of it, and she's going to need a little more help than what she knows. And she's not kidding. Well, I guess you know the saying, some secrets just can't be kept forever. But in Sakura's case, what's going to happen to her and the world if those remaining cards can't be changed in time? Still, Sakura has 33 star cards. So I guess you could say that's another story for another time. And so that ends episode 19.